Welcome to Myco Minute, conversations about collaboration brought to you by the capacity creators at Myco Consulting LLC, where we help higher ed, nonprofit, and philanthropic leaders advance the initiatives they care about most.
Welcome back to Myco Minute. I am Deb Mashek, and I am delighted today to be joined by Jeff Davis, who is both a speaker and an author, and somebody who I initially met because he was working on his book titled Create Togetherness, Transform Sales and Marketing to Exceed Modern Buyers' Expectations and Increase Revenue. So he was working on this amazing book, and I had the opportunity to be interviewed for it. So that's how we originally met. And now, we're kind of flipping roles here. I get to interview you. So first of all, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I always learn something when I talk to you. So I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
I know we're going to see what's going to get uncovered. This will be fun. So your area of expertise makes a lot of sense to people who are in the business world. But for those of us who find that kind of a mysterious space, I'll just say that you focus on helping align sales work and the sales teams with marketing work and marketing teams.
Yes.
And so the three big top of mind questions are, what are sales? What is marketing? And why in the heck would they not already be aligned?
So I love these questions because a lot of times we struggle with them, even with people that are in the roles, right? So I always keep it super simple. Sales is selling one-to-one. So it's convincing one person to buy a product, whereas marketing is selling one to many. And so that's really talking to a broad group of people. And that's like the most basic fundamental way. Obviously, as we kind of accelerate digital technology and transformation, that sort of thing, a lot of those lines are starting to blur. What is traditional sales? What is traditional marketing? Because a lot of them are doing each other's traditional jobs. But I think when you take it back to like the fundamental kind of foundation, one-to-one versus one-to-many, that explains the difference between sales and marketing.
I love that. That totally makes sense to me. So why would they not be aligned already?
Well, historically, and I won't go all the way back to when dinosaurs roamed the earth, but historically what happened really is the Industrial Revolution is really what created marketing, the need for marketing. Prior to that was solely sales, right? We were just selling things to people, and we were stereotypically doing it on a one-to-one basis because we're very like merchant class, right? Mm-hmm. Come in the Industrial Revolution, all of a sudden we are creating all of these products and we have to get them out to a lot of people. So going door to door and one-to-one isn't the most efficient, effective way of doing that. Enter the creation of early marketing. So marketing's job really was to inform a lot of people that these products existed and that you should buy them. And so that's where we start to see the emergence of brand. It's like, now we have competitive products. Which one should you buy, even though they're really the same product? Soap A, soap B, we're going to tell you this is going to make you beautiful and all that sort of thing. And so fast forward, what started to happen is the corporations started to see marketing as a strategic partner because they understood pricing, they understood segmentation, and you started to see marketing shift where it started to be more associated with the C-suite. And so thus started this divide of sales folks are out in the field selling, carrying a bag, and marketing becomes more a strategic partner to senior leadership. We started seeing MBAs being created out of marketing. Not until recently have we had sales even have a curriculum, right? I would say probably in the last 5 years or so, you can get a sales degree. I actually, and I think we've talked about this, I have a degree in mechanical engineering. I fell into sales, right? Most people, when you ask them, did you go to school for sales? They're like, no, of course I didn't go to school for sales. You fall into it. Right. And so you start to see this rift. So I take all that back to say that's how they kind of shifted apart from each other. And it really did create this silo of that marketing was marketing, sales was sales, and marketing just threw whatever they created over the fence to sales, said, go sell and make it work. And if it doesn't work, it's not our fault, it's your fault.
So a couple things. I noticed your hands are doing marketing and sales. Is there a hierarchy?
Very much a hierarchy, okay. Right? So most marketing leaders, and it was actually very astute of you to pick it up because they didn't do it on purpose. But most marketers or marketing leaders stereotypically have to have advanced degrees. Like most marketing managers you'll find, especially in large corporations, have MBAs. Whereas the sales, you can be a sales VP and literally have a high school education. Like there's not a need for sales leaders to have advanced degrees. If you have them, great. But at the end of the day, the corporation is judging you on your ability to perform. And so that's why you start to see this hierarchy of, and I hate to say it, marketers having a superiority complex because, oh, I'm a marketer, I have an MBA, you have to be strategic. Well, I started my career in sales, even, coming from engineering, I had to be strategic to be successful. So there's a misperception. So one of the reasons, and I know we're getting a little bit off topic, I'll come back.
No, this is great.
I wanted to switch over to marketing is I wanted them to understand that your ability not to empathize with what salespeople are going through and your superiority complex is causing you not to communicate with them and truly understand what they need at the time, what I needed. And so that's why I made the shift. But so that's the historical context. Go ahead.
And if I'm understanding how this all works, the salespeople are actually more in touch with the end user and are having more conversations, which one would assume would be valuable on the marketing side too, about what people actually need and what their pain points are.
One would assume that, and I actually talk about this in the book because I call marketers out all the time. I tell them your best, freest, and most recent market research are your salespeople. But if you don't have a relationship with them, if you don't talk with them, if they don't trust you, you're not able to leverage that resource because you've only seen them as people that are, bringing in dollars in the door, right? You've gotten so highfalutin in thinking like, oh, we can only use this research from such and such. And all of those things are valid and true and good. But at the end of the day, if you don't pressure test that against sales, I think one of the things that made my transition to marketing so successful was that I always looked at sales as my customer because I came from sales. And anytime I wanted to do something as a marketer, because I wasn't a quote unquote traditional marketer, I didn't come out of MBA school without any context of being in sales. I was like, well, first of all, I can have the most awesome, bestest strategy ever, but I'm not actually executing it with customers per se. And secondly, even if it's awesome and they don't get it or they don't like it or they think that like they just don't like Jeff Davis, they're not going to do it.
Right.
So I need to get that alignment in order for what I'm trying to do to be successful. And I think coming from sales, I just had that different perspective. And, I remember people would tell me like, how do you get sales on board so quickly? I said, well, actually, they were a part of the whole co-creation process. I call it co-creation. Like I asked them, there's some things internally we had to do, but I fundamentally asked them like, what do you need? I probably won't be able to give you all of it, but the better I know and the better you're able to shape this thing, the more useful it will be for you. You'll be successful. I'll be successful. We all win.
I have no idea why, but the James Bond Q relationship just popped into my head. Of like, what do you need to go out there in the field and be successful?
Yeah, but that's exactly what it is. But what I later found out as I got older and more mature in my career was that takes a sense of empathy, but also recognizing that like it's not about you. By empowering others to be successful, you in turn will be successful. Because at the end of the day, I don't care how smart I am as a marketer. If we're not able to produce revenue,
right,
we're all out of jobs, right? Because as a marketer, I don't directly, in most cases, unless you're like B2C or whatever, I don't directly impact revenue. Like I'm not talking to customers one-on-one every day. Those are our salespeople.
Mm-hmm.
And that is like, kind of the ego trip I have to sometimes, which a lot of marketers and marketing leaders get uncomfortable when we talk about it. If I'm working with a client or whatnot, I was like, you don't drive revenue. I mean, and if you do have some impact on pipeline, that's great and you should, but you are not actually in the face of the customer getting the invoice.
Mm-hmm.
This reality of things.
Yeah, and this idea that everybody's playing a different position, ideally on the same team, as opposed to like, oh, well, I can win the baseball game without a pitcher because I'm the catcher. Like that just doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't.
So what does the misalignment actually look like? So what, when you, back in your consultant days, would go into a corporation, what were the red flags for you where it's like, oh my gosh, this team is not aligned?
Yeah, so there's a list, but I'll give a metaphor maybe, and this actually happened to me, which I think will help people feel it, right?
I love a good story.
I'm in a room, head of sales, head of marketing, same company. And I ask, what is our value proposition to customers, potential customers, target buyers? I got 2 different answers. And I go, here's the problem. You are leadership. You gave me 2 different answers. If you're confused and not aligned, the rest of your organization has no chance. And it wasn't that they were completely like one was on Mars and one was on Venus, but I was like, you are different enough that like, I'm like, well, which one is it? And they're like, well, it's both. I said, well, but no, it's not what I asked. So that really is indicative of like, you know, and another one, I actually had somebody in the podcast. He started his company because he was a tech executive, tech CEO. He would have his, you know, have the quarterly business review. He'd have marketing come in and be like, and I've heard this too, and I've seen this too. Everything is amazing. We have 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 leads. All of our programs are generating, you know, great engagement, and all the metrics are, you know, all this, we're hitting all the marks, right? Great. He's like, awesome. So excited. Sales comes in, right? Sales is like, we can't get in contact with anybody. All these leads are terrible. Nothing's converting. Like, this is the worst. And I'm being a little bit dramatic, right? It wasn't this dramatic.
Right.
But he was like, how can the 2 groups that drive revenue for the organization, who should be the most aligned of anybody, have 2 completely different stories back to back? And he was like, I'm done. Like, we've got to fix this. This doesn't make sense to me. So that is what like real world situations look like, feel like. And it happens more often than people realize, and is continuing to happen just across all industries. Like, it's not just one industry. So I say all that to say, there are like a couple of red flags that I stereotypically see over and over again. So if you have a high volume of leads but low conversion rates, so this is especially true in tech, right? If marketing is saying like, we gave you 10,000 leads, but like, I don't know, 2 of them converted, you guys are not having the same conversation, like just not happening. The other one, which makes my marketing friends and cousins uncomfortable, if marketing isn't directly contributing to pipeline. So what I mean by pipeline is, in addition to working with sales and throwing leads over the silo, so to say, they're not directly getting deals into the pipeline. Misalignment issue, right? Also, go ahead.
Can you unpack that one a little bit for me? Because it's how, again, this is me being totally novice, and this is such a foreign territory. What would it look like for someone in marketing to contribute directly to the pipeline part?
So that would be something like, we are doing programs outside of solely supporting sales that are getting us closer and getting us relationships with big, like major accounts or any type of accounts, versus the old school mentality of, we generate these leads, throw them to you, and they're like, we're out.
It also we wrote some copy and it's sitting over there. You go
checkbox, we've done our job. If it doesn't convert to anything, that's your issue and it's not our problem. The other one would be working on select accounts together. So for instance, if we identify, we have a thing called account-based marketing, which I highly suggest to organizations, because it's really an orchestrated way to have sales and marketing work together to attack account seamlessly across the whole buyer's journey. And so that would be an example of directly contributing a pipeline, because marketing is saying, we are going to engage with this account with you in a meaningful way, and then actually sit down and map that out. That means you're directly contributing to a deal being put in pipeline, versus the old school model of just throwing leads over the fence.
Yeah. And if we're actually carrying this account together, we have to be talking to each other and comparing notes and sharing information and all those
amazing
things.
Surprise.
We should totally
another one that also makes marketing uncomfortable, there's a theme here, is when marketing's compensation is not tied to any type of revenue growth or any type of revenue number. That usually is a red flag for me. It's like, well, what's your incentive to work with sales if none of your compensation is tied with their success? So those are like a couple, those are a few. I mean, there's a laundry list in the book. I think I had like 7 or 8 in the book, so I won't give it all away.
Yeah, but I'm also thinking about so many of the people in sales that I know, their compensation is very much directly tied to their performance.
Absolutely.
And I can just imagine, if my friends in marketing are not actually supporting me, how you would end up with a lot of antagonism and ill will. across those.
Yeah. And it creates, I was on a podcast, I think maybe 4 or 5 years ago. It was a sales focused podcast for sellers and sales leaders. And he's like, I've never been in marketing. So like, most of my listeners haven't been, what would be, I think the question was like, what would be shocking that we don't know? And I said, well, none of our compensation is directly tied to hitting a revenue number. He was like, I'm sorry, what? I said, yeah. And I said, the problem is, this is why a lot of times salespeople don't respect marketers if they don't have a good relationship, because they're like, you don't have any skin in the game.
Right.
And it just blew his mind of like, well, what are you compensated on? I'm like, usually the variable part of your salary is based on company performance, overall company, right? And it depends how big you are. Or yeah, whatever. But like historically, it has been foreign to not look at marketing as a cost center or just the cost of doing business. We don't ever have to turn a profit. We're not worried about ROI. We just throw money at stuff and say, if you can't sell it, it's your fault.
Oh, so fascinating. So then, and I should say, city streets are very active right now. I'm hearing lots of background noise outside my window of children and whatnot. So I don't know if that's coming through, but everybody enjoy that if it is.
Nope, you're good.
So talk to me about the competitive advantage of those organizations that have alignment over those that don't. So why would a company invest the time and energy in trying to get this alignment?
Yeah, so multiple organizations time and time again have proven that companies that are tightly aligned just perform better overall. Company performance, growth and revenue. Aberdeen Group has some great data. Forrester, Gartner, all these organizations, like there's just so much data out there just proves that. So like, let's just check the box and say like alignment has been proven for any business to accelerate growth. Beyond that, having an aligned team is not easily replicable. I'm going to make sure I said that word right. So when you're able to spend the time to do it and you really get it right, once your competitors realize what you're doing, it takes a while to catch up with you. It's not something you just turn on a switch and you're like, oh, we're all aligned. Yeah. So that's one competitive advantage of just being able to create this thing that's not easily, done by your competitors. On top of that, like right now, because we're in this digital first era, especially in B2B, which is where I specialize, information flow is super critical. And it's got to be fast. And when sales learn something, an aligned team is able to get that information from sales to marketing, strategize about how we're going to react to it and get something back out to them in a timely fashion. If you're operating in an old way where you don't communicate, it takes longer for that information to get up to corporate. You may sit on it or not think it's timely, where your competitors is all like, oh, we've already reacted to it. And we changed the widget or we changed the feature or we're like, whatever. And so it's about speed. And if you're not aligned and you're all going in the same direction, like you're just not going to be competitive as other folks that are.
Yeah. And I'm really hearing, again, I'm watching your hands. So I didn't realize this was one of my things, but now I think it might be one of my things. But you're talking about, as you're talking, information was going this way and this way in the newer model of alignment, as opposed to this almost unidirectional flow.
Yes.
Is that okay? That's right.
Totally. Yep. And I talk about it in the book too. It's like historically, what you have seen is it's the information, and actually, and thank you so much for allowing me to leverage the collaboration continuum, because one of the things I wanted to see was there a viewpoint from psychology that helped us understand this as humans, so that people could get it, right? And historically, when you're further down, before collaboration happens, it stereotypically is a one-way street. And it's historically has been marketing tells sales what the strategy is, and sales just goes and execute. There's no feedback loop. There's no meaningful feedback loop. And we know in order for, and I don't want to get too into like systems theories and like all that sort of thing, but like when you get into system theory, in order for like sales to grow and change and stay alive, they need a feedback mechanism to be able to react to the environment, right? That's how we as humans stay alive.
I love your engineering mind here.
Right. I try not to go down the rabbit hole too far, but we, in essence, as a company, are an organism. And so if we don't have feedback that we can meaningfully get from the environment and then change behavior, you're not going to be in business for a very long time. And so that's why I say organizations that have this information flow back and forth, and it's seamless and it's fast and it's quick, they are set up to succeed in the future. And the ones that are, historically, archaically, unilateral, as you said,
Right.
you're too slow. You're too slow.
So what about on the, putting your old school consultant hat on? What's the advice? So, whether it applies, I suspect this applies not just to the corporate sector, but when you go in, you're diagnosing, what are the steps you're actually taking people through? Like, what is the advice to get us to alignment when you notice these disconnects?
Yeah, it's a great question. I learned this over the years, is that you have got to first get everybody to agree that there is an issue. What I learned, sometimes the hard way, there are varying degrees of acknowledgement of that, we have an issue. And so a lot of the things we talk about, like going through the list of factors that show you that misalignment is an issue, and really having meaningful conversations about what that means, and making sure that people are in a place where they're okay with us calling the baby ugly. Because if you don't have that foundation, a couple things happen. You get people that are either vocal dissenters that want to drag through the whole process of like, I don't agree, because they were never on board. Or you get like the silent assassins that are like, yeah, everything's great, and then secretly they're undermining you the whole time because they don't really want to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I really try to make sure that I instill with any group that I'm working with that it's not about the people. It's not about Jeff, it's not about Deb, it's not about Harry, it's not about Tim. It's about us collectively as a group recognizing that there is an issue at the center of the table. Not anyone's fault. We're not pointing fingers. We just have to have a come to Jesus moment and say, we have an issue. Let's deal with the issue and talk about the issue and not make it personal. And I think then people are okay letting their defenses down, because you do have to have a little bit of sense of like, okay, yeah, we probably could do that better. But if we're starting with like, you're bad at this, people are like, yeah, I'm not doing this process.
Or you all over there are bad. You
all, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
No one's bad. It's just that we've operated in a way, I like to use the word that's dysfunctional, and I talk about this in my keynotes, is that when sales and marketing have a dysfunctional relationship, we stereotypically think that means combative. I've seen organizations where the sales and marketing person actually get along, but don't have a good business relationship. Personal relationship is good, right? That's great. Awesome. We go out, we hang out, we have beers, we're cordial, we like each other. But I'm like, but your business relationship's not good because you're not leveraging each other's teams to make you more successful. And that is what I'm focused on, is increasing your acumen of your business relationship.
Yeah. And this idea of making it, frankly, safe enough to have the hard conversation. Would you say the baby's ugly?
The baby's ugly.
That we're going to have to talk about.
Right.
And doing it in a way that doesn't trigger defensiveness or possessiveness. And lets people be vulnerable. Be like, yeah, we've kind of screwed this up. We have to unpack it and we have to figure out a better way to do this. Yeah.
And I stereotypically approach that because, this is a very fine dance that you have to do, is just talking about the market has shifted. And one of the things that has shifted due to digital transformation, disruption, acceleration, whichever one you want to use it, is that there has been a shift in the direction of information flow. So I use the analogy of like, back in the day when you were like, I'm not going to age myself, but back in the day when you were young and you went and you got your first car because you were 16 and you went to the used car dealership before, like, the Blue Book and Consumer Reports, all that stuff, you had no information. It was like Uncle Ted told you something about what he did one time, but you were at the whim of the salesperson. Yeah. So I talk about these disruptive shifts in the marketplace that have caused what we're doing to be out of date. So you shift to Consumer Reports. So all of a sudden now you have this information. So I'm not coming to the salesperson to ask you, the features and benefits and the price, because I already have that in the book. So now if you're only focused on features and benefits, I'm like, well, dude, like you bring me no value, right? So we have to shift the way that we approach the market. And then, the second or third shift would then be things like Carvana, where we can like literally go online and order a car, whatever, stop ever going to a car lot. So if you haven't recognized those shifts in your marketplace and you're still operating as if you were in phase one, again, not making it about the person, but you're just using a model that is outdated. And so we have to shift along with the shifts in the market. And so that stereotypically, knock on wood, has helped me ease into what you're doing is out of date.
Yeah. We need
You know what I mean?
Yeah, we need to change the color on the door and maybe some new curtains. I mean, I know
There,
it's more deep
yeah,
than that for the deep structures, but to make it a comfortable first step to even have that conversation, that totally makes sense.
yeah.
So what about, I don't know if you can talk about this, but what are you doing now?
Yeah, so I'm actually really excited. I won't say the name of the company, but I was approached with an opportunity to do my work on a larger scale in a Fortune 500 company, which I love. And so now I am very much, I would say an in-house consultant to a lot of large scale brands that, my role really is focused on what I'm passionate about is this cross-functional collaboration. But not only that, but also looking at the go-to-market strategy and elevating the way that we go to market. And so we talked a little bit before we got on the recording. I am extremely happy because I am so passionate about this work. I would have not been able to sustain the years that I've been having this message, which is too many to count if I wasn't. So really, really excited. And so, couldn't be happier doing that in-house. And in addition to that, we're in the early stages of a couple big projects outside of the new role. So we'll be launching a digital selling course here. So really looking at how do you build a digital first system as a seller, right? Like not teaching you how to sell per se, but how do you make sure you have the right tools, the right mindset, the right structure, all of that sort of thing. Because, especially if you went from like where I came from, traditional, feet on the ground, door to door selling, to go to virtual overnight is really, really tough. And you have to adapt the way that you do that. So we're super excited about that. And then we're in the early stages of writing the second book. Very, very early. I know, right? I told myself I wouldn't write one.
I feel like this one just came out, but I guess it's been a year.
2 years.
2 years.
We did the audio book in 2020 amidst COVID. That was my COVID project, right?
I mean, what a great thing to do in isolation. I need a sound.
I was like, right. Exactly what happened. I was like, what can I do? And I don't have to go outside. Oh, I can do an audio book. So it's been 2 years. So early stages of that one. And then we're also working on a workbook to accompany the original Create Togetherness. So a couple of big projects, which I'm super excited about, not like I need anything else.
I was going to say, how do you have the time? So Jeff, if people would like to learn more about you or your work, where are the places they should go? And I'll be sure to put the links in the show notes, as they say.
Thank you so much. So my primary is LinkedIn. I'm super active on LinkedIn. So if you go to LinkedIn and just search Meet Jeff Davis, you will find me. Also on Instagram. And then my website is meetjeffdavis.com. You can also pick up the book at createtogethernessbook.com. That guy, I got my copy too.
I know, high five, copy high
five. So you can get that guy at createtogethernessbook.com. It's also, as we just talked about, in audiobook form. So I encourage you to grab that one if you're struggling with anything that we talked about, or you're just looking at a new, fresh way to look at your sales and marketing. I actually use a lot of the work that Deb has authored. So I guess that's a dual plug. That's a you plug.
Yeah, like there's a lot of love here, Jeff.
Yeah, I came across our work. I was like, oh my God, it's amazing. I reached out to you. You were so kind to let me to use it in my work. So I'm super appreciative of you. But folks can pick that up at createtogethernessbook.com. Everything else is Meet Jeff Davis.
Amazing. And I'll give a plug to your book too, which is that it's incredibly well written, and the way you've structured it with obviously what are the pain points and how to address this, but then you also weave together all of these amazing podcast interviews you did with various experts. And there's like this listing of all of the episodes. So it's just like this really cohesive, credible, compelling piece of content. So I totally recommend it. And for those who are interested in checking out what we've been up to at Myco, I put up some case studies on the website, so feel free to swing by there and check it out. And until next time, thank you to Jeff for joining me today. I really love this conversation, and I'm grateful that collaboration brought us together.
I appreciate it, Deb. Thanks so much.